What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are yet again on another episode of At Home with Mark, season 8, episode 17. And we got Ryan from Demos in the Dark. Dude, I've been waiting to do this for quite some time, and I super appreciate you hanging out.
Oh yeah, man, absolutely. I got 8 seasons. That's
It's been going on, man.
that's insane. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a hobby gone wrong.
dude. Amen. You know what happened? Well, we can talk about this because I want to ask you about how your channel got started and everything. Wonder if it's the same as all of us, where the pandemic kind of just forced us into things. But when this started, I was going to do one a month, and I sent, like, Joey Landreth is a good friend, and he was the first guest. And then I was like, you know what? I'll send feelers out to all these other people, like Ariel Posen and Charlie Hunter and all these people, and they all said yes. And I was like, oh shit.
You had Charlie Hunter on, the GOAT? My goodness.
In the first season, man. It was crazy.
Wow.
I took a lesson with him a while back, and I think he remembered me from that, which helped. But yeah, it was fun.
Ready, Set, Shango was such an important part of my being. Like it embedded itself so deeply into me. And like maybe like 4 or 5 years ago at NAMM, I was going to this after party that was supposed to be just for Canadians. I don't know how I got in. But and it had 2 rooms, and in one room is where most everybody was just drinking and talking and stuff like that. And I'm hanging out, and all of a sudden I'm like hearing music from the other room, and I'm like, is that Charlie Hunter over there? And somebody was standing there, was like, oh yeah, he's playing. And I went into the other room, and there were, like, I kid you not, like 5 people in the room with Charlie Hunter. And like he had a whole quartet going because he had a singer. And so like just walked up to the stage and sat like this far from Charlie Hunter, and just like,
dude, yeah.
He's great.
Man, what album of his, like, did you come into? Was that the first record you heard? Or?
Ready, Set, Shango was the one. I was 16 or 17 when that record came out. And I had an old VW Rabbit. And I had the Discman. And I just burned that disc out.
Yeah. Yeah. I always talk about him in the terms of, like, he's one of the most fearless artists I think I've ever seen. In the sense that every record he puts out, it's like he's reinventing his career. And I find that extremely admirable. Like, I without isolating his fan base too. I feel like everybody kind of like comes with him in a sense, you know?
Yeah.
And that's hard to do, especially in the music industry. So,
well, I mean, and consider like some of the great records that he's played on that aren't his, and like just the vast scope of that. I mean, like D'Angelo. I mean, like, give me a break. You know, like I went a long time listening to that record without knowing it was him.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And then I figured it out, and I was like, of course.
Yeah. It's him. I know, you can hear it when you know, you can hear it like right away.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that is I brought that up, and he was like, man, all cats in your generation are all like into that record. And I was like, well, it's hard not to be into that record. It's such a like sea change. Like, for me, it was a huge sea change in terms of really understanding like deep R&B music. You know, it's a record that it like will go down in history as like, you know, wide scope for like reaching kind of beyond like the regular R&B crowd. Even, you know, look at me, random dude in suburbia, white dude in suburbia. So
yeah, I mean, my musical background is at least kind of how I found myself understanding music was, you know, I had a dad who had a recording studio built in the house, but he was like really into like proggy white rock stuff, you know, like that was his, you know, really, really intricate guitar parts, and, you know, like that was his thing. But he had a day job, so I was left home all day with mom, and mom listened to nothing but Motown, soul, and R&B. And so that's really where my heart is. And then I have some weird, quirky shreddy stuff just kind of in the back there that I can access every once in a while when I need to. And yeah, I mean, as far as R&B records go, you know, like I put the D'Angelo records up there with like, you know, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, which in my mind was, you know, one of the biggest kind of sea change records out there.
Right.
But
Yeah. There was, you know what's funny too is like when I first heard Voodoo, I heard it at the same time. There was two when I was in school in college. God, I hate those stupid balloons. I need to get rid of.
dude, we figured out all of them.
Oh, what's
There are tons of them.
Oh God, no, let's not talk about that. Does that do something?
Yeah, it's supposed to make oh my gosh, there are all kinds of them. The other guys have figured them all out, but I mean, there are tons of them, like lasers, all kinds of stuff.
Oh my God. But I heard that record the same time I heard Johnny Lang's Turnaround. Have you heard that record?
He's a Minnesota boy, yeah.
Oh man, that record, like hearing those two albums at the same time,
yeah,
blew the lid off my dome. I was like, what is going on? Where have I been? You know what I mean? Well, talk to me a little bit more about that stuff, because I always want to know, like, well, I always ask this, but like, what's your earliest musical memory?
Boy, that's weird. I don't know that I have one, because it was just such a part of my life. I mean, having a musician for a father, it was everywhere and it was constant. I remember the thing that stuck out to me the most when you asked that though was when they got me my first guitar, which was, you know, a little Harmony acoustic. I don't even know how, I was really young. But I remember sitting in my room at night and I had figured out on my own how to play the Satisfaction lick. And I had just seen the movie Dick Tracy in the theaters, and Madonna was in that movie. And I decided right then and there in that movie theater that cooties were not real, and I was all into Madonna. And so I would sit in my room at night playing that lick over and over again with lyrics about my love for Madonna.
Heck yeah, dude. Okay. That's a pretty good one. That's a good early memory.
Yeah.
So did you, like, growing up with your dad being a musician and there being like a studio in the house, like how young were you when you started kind of, or when he let you maybe get in there and like tinker with him? And because that's, I mean, that makes total sense to me now, like seeing what you do on your channel and, you know, all the videos that you post, it makes complete sense now.
Yeah. It didn't make sense to me until, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. But yeah, I mean, he was very measured in how he let me in. And you know, when I started playing, when they bought me that guitar, you know, he was like, you're going to take lessons with me and we're going to do it right. And you're going to learn everything and, you know, the right way and, you know, whatever. And I hated it. I hated every second of it. And I ultimately just kind of went, let's not do this anymore.
Yeah.
But it was still like really inside of me. But I fast forward a couple of years and I bought my own guitar at a yard sale and it came with a book. And I tore that book apart. Okay. And then I took some other lessons and stuff like that from a local shop, just kind of get some groundwork laid. And then what my dad became, and this worked out way better for us. Imagine your 14-year-old son walking into your studio someday going like, hey, you know the guitar solo on Kid Charlemagne? Can we learn that? And that was like I mean, we took that solo apart measure by measure. And by the time it took a while, but by the time I was like 15, I could play that. I don't know if I can play that solo anymore, but you know, and so it became that kind of relationship when it was like, I'm stumped and I need some help. can you help me out with that? As far as the studio stuff goes, he didn't want me in there.
All right. Okay.
Nope.
Do you think
there was a deadbolt on the door and he used it?
Do you think early on, if your dad had not been your teacher, do you think you still would have been like, let's not do this anymore?
No.
If you would have had, yeah.
No, I think it was, I think it was just, I mean, like I think it was just that particular situation. I think I had a hard time with having dad having another thing to harp on me for, like
Yeah.
not practicing or, whatever. And so I think it became not fun for me. And I think if it would have been, I mean, again, I did take some lessons at a local shop and, like from some 20-year-old, and that was fine. And I think it was the dad relationship that really kind of made it difficult.
Yeah. Dude, I hear my daughter's 13 and like maybe like 2 years ago, she got interested and like I got her a guitar, like just like a little 3/4 size guitar, like a Squire.
Mhm.
And she started playing it and then she started being able to play like first position chords and stuff. But then I'd be like, hey, do you want to work on that? And she'd be like, all right, now I want to blah, blah, blah. Like it's always
Yeah.
an excuse. And then I'd be like, but you have like natural talent. Like I'm trying to like nurture this. And I think that's the problem. And I told my wife, I was like, see, I told you, I was like, I feel like it never works out when the parent is the teacher. It's like we should take her to like the local shop.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I think, the other thing that's really interesting about that relationship that I had with my dad, and it's still something that we talk about to this day, is that he didn't really want me doing this for a living. Um,
mm,
and even then, so that was the 80s. It was possible to have a career in music in the 80s and never leave your hometown. Like you could play wedding receptions, you could play local gigs, you could do all that kind of stuff and eke out a pretty decent living. But even that, he was like, his day job was he was a CFO and he hated every second of it, but the money was good and the family was taken care of and stuff like that.
right.
And so I remember when I declared, and I said, yeah, I'm going to school for music composition. He's like, great, that'll make you a better waiter.
Oh,
Um,
burn.
yeah, and I think he had just faced like so many of the hardships of it that he was probably burnt out on it, but also just like this is not a sustainable career to choose for yourself.
Mhm.
And even then the odds were still pretty low at making like the big time, but now they're impossibly, low. But so I think he always kind of wanted to temper that attitude. But I went through my whole adult life just figuring it out, and like I don't think I can do anything else. Is really kind of what it boils down to. I've had some jobs and I didn't do a very good job holding them down. So,
Man, yeah, it's weird these days because like what you said, like you could have a career in music. Like I guess these days there are other avenues, but I mean, are you doing composition? Like are you doing sync stuff and licensing for film and TV?
I do. Yep.
Okay.
So when I after college, moved out to New York for a while and made some contacts and stuff like that, and did a bit of work out there, and then a lot of those, now that we're in this kind of like virtual world, a lot of those contacts are still my contacts, um, and it's a lot easier to do that stuff than it used to be. But it's also like a lot less lucrative than it used to be.
Yeah, man.
When I started doing it, those were the days where, like you had the producer who was in charge of creating that track for, the firm. And, they would call you, you would go into the studio, you'd clock in, you'd have a cup of coffee, you'd hang out, you'd talk about whatever. and then you take a couple of takes, they talk about other stuff, then maybe you'd go back, fix stuff, then you'd be like, well, let's do some just in case stuff. And then you were in there for 4 hours at $100 an hour, and then you left. And and now it's like it was around the financial crash time, which is about when I came back to Minnesota. That then it became the can you do everything?
Mhm.
And we're gonna give you less than you were making to do one thing.
Mhm,
Like
mhm.
that was where it became, and it's which I think is true of a lot of music. I mean, we used to save up money to go into recording studios to record records, um and it was a big stinking process. And
Mhm.
now everybody can do that stuff at home. I mean, there are incredible, like some incredible records that I mean, take that big Billie Eilish record. I mean,
Right?
they did that in they did that. I mean, for the record, it was mixed and mastered by some really, really pro
Yeah.
people, but they tracked that whole thing in a bedroom. And
Right.
it's like on a computer, you can just do that. And you couldn't do that in the 90s. And so on one hand, it makes music far more accessible, but on the other hand, it cheapens it, I
Yeah.
believe. So, like, because if it, at this point, if a firm comes to me wanting to do a sync deal, or wants me to create a track for a piece, like I have to know in the back of my head that if I don't quote it right, there's somebody behind me who's going to do it for half,
Yeah.
and it'll be probably just as good.
Yeah. That's such a bummer, dude. It's weird 'cause where'd you go to school
Went
for?
to the University of Minnesota.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so, like, I just remember learning from teachers about that stuff with sync and everything, just about, like, dude, back in the 80s and 90s, it was like monopoly money just dropped on your porch, like, talking tens of thousands of dollars if you get something placed in a TV show or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yep.
And now it's like work for hire is like probably gonna get 3 grand for writing a theme song.
Yeah.
And that's like, oh, and then, like, do you get back end stuff? Most of the time not. They're not doing that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Um, it's hard to be, like, in that world now, whereas, like, in that when did, like, Grey's Anatomy come on? Was that, like, the late 90s or mid 90s? When did
I
that
think that
show come
was
on?
I think it was early 2000s
Or
maybe?
yeah, you're probably right, yeah.
Yeah.
But think about all the great pop music that went and all the people that got synced for those and licensed their music. That was good bread then, but
Yep.
it's just tapered off, man.
Yeah. No, so I'm from Minnesota, and the Rembrandts were from here as well. So I know the guys who did the Friends theme song.
Oh, yeah.
And like I kind of I kind of got the impression that I wouldn't say that that money has dried up, but it's not as great as it had been for a while, which is fine. I think part of it is the passage of time, and I think the other part of it is restructuring of contracts and things like that. And but then they hate that song.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah.
um, but then also, I am friends with the guys from Phantom Planet, and like I don't know where that band would be without the OC.
Mhm.
I mean, like that was the first time I heard them, and that was another show that was, I mean, that was incredible. Like turning on television, watching a teen drama, and there's Elliott Smith music in the background. You're like, what is this?
Yeah, man. That's so cool. I feel the same way about The Bear right
Yeah,
now. Like, they're using a ton of great music. I mean, I'm a huge Pearl Jam nut, so, like, they've used a bunch of Pearl Jam stuff in that show. But, like, John Mayer was in there. I mean, there's
yeah.
been a bunch of great music in that show too.
So last fall, I'm gonna say, I got a note from Jessica Dobson from Deep Sea Diver,
Oh, cool.
and she was like, "Hey, I got a fly. I'm doing a fly gig, and you have Benson Monarch. Um, and instead of renting, I would rather use something I'm familiar with. Um, because I think she used a Monarch all throughout the shins, and I think she uses a different Benson model now, but it was close enough. And I was like, sure, yeah, where do you want me to drop it? And she was like, Excel Energy Center. And I was like, who are you playing with? And it was Pearl Jam.
Oh, God.
And this is gonna kill you. I'm sorry. This is
That's
gonna
okay.
hurt. But we went a friend and I went the second night, and I mean she took care of us. We had wristbands and stuff like that. So we were down in the GA section, which was amazing that a band is doing GA in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's amazing. But then the other thing that was cool about it was, like, it was GA, but there was so much space to move around. And I know the show sold out, so it wasn't like people didn't buy it. I mean, like, they just kept that comfortable. And we watched the Deep Sea Diver set, and it was amazing. And then Pearl Jam came on, and that was, I mean, they were a big part of I was 13 when 10 came out, so it was an impactful band for me. But they started out doing this like acoustic thing, and they were all sitting down, and we were like, let's give it 4 songs, and hopefully they start using those amps behind them.
Right.
And by 4 songs they hadn't, and we were like, all right, let's go.
Oh no, dude. When was this show?
I think it was last fall.
Okay, so I went to see them in Camden, New Jersey on the same tour, and they did the same thing. Like, they opened up with like Wash and a bunch of like acoustic things, but then they just ripped a new, asshole in the world. Like,
well,
it was such a good. I mean, have you seen them before that?
No,
dude. I'll go on record. I mean, I think they just put out a great new record. I don't know if you've heard their new album, but it's amazing. It's really good. And I would put that up there. Like, I just had someone on last week that does a Pearl Jam podcast, and we did our top 5 records, and both of us had that in the top 5.
Cool. Yeah.
Amongst Verses and 10 and all that. So it's good.
We had Jacob Givens on, and he was invited to the listening party for that record, and he came on with us like shortly after that, and he was like, I can't talk about it, but it is amazing, and he said it's polished, but we're also not in our 20s anymore, and so we make more polished things, and that's just kind of the natural progression of stuff. But he said it was a phenomenal record. I do need to give that a listen.
Yeah, it's great, dude. It's awesome. All right, so then let's jump ship from there, from rock and roll. So like I told you, when I had Charles on from Silktone, he was talking to me. I said something. I don't know when I referenced the Dead, but he was like, "Oh man, do you know Ryan from Demos in the Dark?" And I was like, "I know of him, but I've never met him." And he's like, "You gotta have him on here, and you gotta talk to him, because you guys would totally hit it off about this stuff." So like, tell me a little bit about your relationship, because I was like both simultaneously exposed to Pearl Jam, which made me want to play guitar, and then my older brother was a huge Deadhead and a Fish head. So like I got like thrown into both of those worlds at the same time in like 1991. So I'm talking like Junta was the first thing I heard.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know what I heard of the Dead first, but it might have been a live tape that my brother had, because he had a ton of bootlegs. So like, when did you get into that stuff?
I didn't have an older brother. I had an older sister who was into the scariest of all scary metals. So
nice.
Yeah. But I had an older cousin who I spent a lot of time with, and he found the Dead and passed that on to me. And I was young. I was probably like 13. So probably about the same time as you. And it was unlike anything I had ever heard before. And he had tapes. And so like he hooked me up with some like a good kind of like starter pack of tapes. And then I was doing tape trading like crazy. And I still have them. I have like 250 Dead shows on tape.
Heck
You
yeah,
know,
dude.
and but that it was such a labor of love too. You know, it was like taking the tapes and rewinding them and fast forwarding them and getting it all ready and stuff like that and making sure it was the the exact kind of tape that was gonna sound the best, filling out your J cards so that whoever you're trading with is going to be able to read it legibly. I mean, like the tape trading thing was a serious chunk of time of your day to do it. And thankfully I was a teenager and I didn't have anything else to do with my day. But I was so floored by that group. And we had kind of discussed, I had this R&B background. I always kind of throughout my life, I listened to a ton of jazz. I don't have the discipline to play jazz. And I never really have. And I think there are parts of jazz that it gets a little too mathematical for me, and I'm more of a feel kind of person. But I listened to a ton of it, and like the thing that struck me as the Dead, it was like, so this is like jazz for people who don't have the discipline to
Right.
to
Yeah.
learn jazz. Like they're doing all the same stuff. It's just it's different and it's not quite as heady. But again, like I took I still take lessons. I take lessons from a dude who has a YouTube channel called Marvin Music, and it's just this crazy prog jazz stuff.
Oh, cool.
And it was like probably like 2 months ago, I took the guitar solo from They Love Each Other from 5877, which he just leads in with all these enclosures and just bizarre stuff. And I sent that to him, and I'm 43 years old. I'm like, tell me what I'm not understanding about this, because Jerry knew a lot of stuff and there was a lot of really cool stuff, but like it didn't rely on that. It wasn't all enclosures, it wasn't all arpeggios, it wasn't it wasn't all that stuff. But he would slide it in here and there. And so it really resonated with me. And then after college I ended up doing some work with Vince Welnick, which was like and that was shortly before he died, which was really too bad. But Fish didn't do it for me.
Really?
Yeah, I thought it was too goofy.
Mm.
And it is goofy by nature. And like I remember that period of time where Fish took a break. And then it was kind of like, I feel like the way the jam band scene works is it's kind of like Highlander. There could be only one.
Yeah.
And so when Jerry died, Fish took the mantle. And then when they took that break, there was this like frenzy for like who was gonna be in that position. It was like String Cheese Incident and Mo. Yeah.
Which, by the way, I mean, I love Mo. Like I was a huge Mo fan since the 90s until now. And now I know a bunch of those guys and have hung out at backstage and stuff. And it's like, if I could tell my younger self that was going to happen, it would just be like,
yeah.
But I thought for sure they were gonna, skyrocket.
Be them. Yeah.
Yeah, but didn't.
And and then Fish came back, and then that solved that problem. But that was always kind of like the thing that I was always kind of like, this stuff is just really kind of goofy, and I'm very serious. Right. I don't know why it bugged me, but it did. There's actually do you remember they were out of New Hampshire, they were called Percy Hill?
Yeah,
that was their I think it's called Color in Bloom. That was a record that I think really tied the R&B to the jam, to the, whatever. And like, they were really great. And it was a huge, that was a huge inspiration for me as well. And even now, like I'll go back and listen to it. It sounds decidedly aged, but it's still just like, man, this is like, you guys were doing really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, man. And Nate, the keyboard player from Percy Hill, is now in Mo as a full-time
Oh,
member.
no way.
So
Okay.
they have a keyboard
Like
player now.
that dude rips.
Yeah, he's
Like,
awesome.
I mean,
Yeah.
he's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's killer. He plays flute too, and like, yeah, he's just, you know, super mega talented. But I think that Mo sounds better than ever now with him because did you hear about all the stuff when Chuck had a stroke? The one guitar player had a
No, I
stroke.
don't know anything about it.
Oh man, so like he had a really bad stroke, almost died.
Okay.
In I think it was 2021 maybe or something like that. But I mean, he's back playing now and everything. But dude, like, yeah, they did not think he was gonna make it.
Yeah.
And that was hard because he was like my guy. Like, so like when
Yeah.
I was coming up, like I used to study him because he's a huge Wayne Krantz head.
Hmm.
And I love Wayne. And I'm like, no wonder I like Chuck. Chuck is kind of like leaning on this like rhythmic improvisation vibe when he's soloing and like, you know, it's melodic, but it's very rhythmic and it's very sideways.
Yeah.
Which is what I love about Wayne because he's like a swarm of bees coming at you.
Hmm.
But man, like when that happened, I think that's when Nate started kind of touring with him to fill in the gap. And then I think they just loved it so much. They're like, all right,
Just
let's
kept him.
just
Yeah.
keep him in and like
No,
Chuck's back. So
he rips.
yeah.
That was a really exciting time too, because you know there were a lot of groups that I was um introduced to that weren't necessarily the jam band scene, but they were like approved by the jam band scene. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
Soul Live,
Oh hell yeah.
Medeski, Martin and Wood, you know, anything Carl Denson touched, you know, like, and so like I kind of was able to get into that like that funk jam scene, and that like that was amazing. It was a good time. There was, and then you would get, you know, like you could go to a festival and you could have Soul Live, and then you could have a rock band like Mo, and then you could have, you know, Keller Williams barefoot playing acoustic guitar. I mean, it was just like it was like this like hodgepodge of stuff, and everybody was cool with it, and it was like
Yeah.
everybody loved everything, and I was just like, man, this is. It was cool because it was like there was no like ego in it, there was no snobbery in it, there was no like, you know, like you know, like you don't listen to Strokes, you know. I mean, it was like you know, it was just like, oh, who's playing? This is cool. Let's check it out, you know. And I thought the other thing that I think was incredible about that crowd, is that they're just there to listen to music, and they're just
Mhm.
there to enjoy it. And you know, there's nobody staring at their shoes, you know, at those shows, and they're open. Yeah, like I said, they're open to anything as long as as long as it's cool. And you just don't you just don't you know, coming from the world of jazz snobbery or indie rock snobbery or any of that kind of stuff, it's so refreshing. It's just
Yeah.
absolutely. And you know, this is weird. There's a game on my phone called Wordscapes, um, and like I'm really obsessed with it. I've been playing it for years, and they have tournaments. And I was allowed into this group that's called the Grateful Dead, and all of these people they have a Discord group. Like, I mean,
Wow.
it's amazing. They are all retired. They have adult children. They all went to those shows in the 70s and the 80s. And in retirement, guess what they're doing? They're following Rat Dog. They're
Ah,
following Dead and Co. Like, I mean,
man.
now they're staying in nice hotels and stuff like that. But they're still traveling and going, you know, five stretches, you know, show stretches and stuff like that. And it's like, and I think like that's the thing about that crowd and that audience, that is like they just crave the emotional response of being in a room where music is being played. And it's something I feel like we could all learn from. But at the
Yeah.
same time, you tell somebody that they could learn something from a deadhead, and they'll be like, you know, like,
Well, I agree with you, man. There's something special about it, and then that's really like you kind of just described it better than I could ever describe it. But it does. There's a feeling, and there's an inclusivity
mhm,
that happens when you're at those shows and like everybody is there for one sole purpose, and it's to enjoy the music that's been made and written and recorded and we've heard a million times over, but we still go back to it because it does evoke some sort of emotion. And it does, like, when did you see all like the pictures and like the footage from the Sphere from this past weekend?
Yeah.
That
Look
friggin'
cool.
the Cornell thing. Did you
Yep.
see that?
Yep.
Dude, like, what the hell? Like, I don't know if there'll ever be a chance for me to go see a band that I love at the Sphere, but
Yeah.
God damn it. Like, if you could go see Dead and Company on any of these shows right now, this seems like, if you're a fan, it seems like it's going to check every box.
Yeah.
You know?
I saw them twice. And I've really enjoyed it. I'm not a huge John Mayer fan. And I really don't like when he sings.
Oh, okay.
Especially when he's like singing Donna's parts. I'm kind of
Right.
like but I watched those Soldier Field shows with Trey, and I thought Trey did an incredible job. But it was still very much Trey. Like you could hear that he changed things a little bit, but it was still very much a Trey thing. And the thing that I love about John in Dead and Co is you can tell he spent so much time really trying to get inside of Garcia's head and the way Garcia played, which is a daunting task because like Jerry was so nuanced and so all over, like it just like you can't copy the guy. And he's not doing like the Dark Star Orchestra thing where he is really almost copying him note for note. He's still doing John, but he is nodding in really, really respectful places.
Mm-hmm.
And he is doing what the song requires and what's going to be best for the audience that's there to hear it. And I think, there was zero shock when he was announced as the guy who's going to take over that guitar part or playing guitar for that band. And he's so respectful in his approach to it. And I don't think anybody else, I couldn't do it better.
Yeah, he definitely did his homework. Big time. And it's interesting to watch him because, I mean, if I was in that audience, and I will be completely authentically real right now, when I close my eyes, I want to pretend that it's Jerry. So I want to hear some Jerryisms. I want to hear the tone, that we're all, comfortable with hearing. And he's kind of nailing that stuff. And I like that he's doing it, like you said, in his own way. I mean, you can still hear John come out. Like, so when the bluesy stuff happens, you can hear that come out. But like, if you hear him playing Help Is On The Way, it feels like Jerry's playing.
Yep.
And that's just like cathartic in a way, I think for a lot of fans. So
no, I think he's a wonderful fit for that group. I just wish they would get somebody to do Donna's parts.
Right. There's plenty. I mean, I know there's plenty of like singers I'm not sure they could pull from, but
Joan Osborne was doing it for a while.
I know that.
Yeah. I can't imagine Joan Osborne's doing much these days.
That's true. Pull her in, man.
Yeah.
You know what else is a great? Did you have any of those Phil and Friends shows with so like remember like it was like Trey and then Kimmock and like how great was that band at that point? Like those little run of shows that those guys did. I mean, that was, and I think they played. There was an amazing version of Terrapin.
Yeah.
On the one I have, I think. But how many shows did those guys do as that group?
I don't know.
Not that many.
Yeah. They played a place over in Wisconsin, not too far from me. And there was a local band called the Big Woo.
Oh, yeah.
And they were playing this thing as well. And it was Phil and Friends, Les Claypool's Flying Frog Brigade.
Yeah.
And the Big Woo. And I just loved I loved every second of that except for the Claypool thing. That just scared the living daylights out of me. Like I was just like, these notes are so low that I can't, like, are they even notes? What is going on right now? And but but yeah, that Claypool set was amazing. And it wasn't or not Claypool, Phil and Friends. It wasn't Trey. I think it was Kimak on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably. I mean that because he toured with them for a while as well.
Yeah.
It's cool to see Phil out there doing different stuff too. Like I saw recently, like Daniel Donato was playing with him.
Yeah.
Kraz has been playing with him a bunch, so it's neat to see that stuff pop
He's
up.
he's one. I think about him as a bass player a lot, and I think this also applies to like Pino Palladino. Where I wonder what it's like to play on stage with them, because like they rarely hit the root. Like rarely hit the root, and they also rarely hit the one. Like the parts that they're doing are just so weirdly intertwined. And I find myself as a player, as a guitar player, like who plays a lot of rhythm, because you have to, and like you're really relying on that bass. And I don't know what it would be like to play with somebody like Phil, who's just like, and you listen back, and it wasn't like he was screwing up. It was like he was on a different plane. And same with Pino. Like Pino's on a different plane of music understanding than I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't know. I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah. He's very loose and fluid, but like not in like a, choppy way, or not in like a, look what I can do. I know how to play this tension against this note and it's going to sound interesting kind of thing. I feel like he's just it's almost like he's like almost like Paul McCartney, how Paul McCartney is very melodic. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Are you into Dawes at all?
No, I'm not. It's too, what's his face? It's a guy that they pretty much just sound like. Jackson, it's too Jackson Brownie for me.
Oh, really? See, I love Dawes, and it's interesting because they've done some gigs, like dead gigs with Phil, where they crushed it. Like, and that talk about like a group of guys like put it in the homework too, that are very studious musicians that like want to like lift the music and not show up and be a schlub.
Right.
But it's interesting because when you see them play with Phil, it sounds fine, sounds tight, but like again, Phil is it's like all eyes on him. I'm sure anytime like they're doing that music, it's like, okay, like we gotta follow him.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? Like you're saying,
I mean, you take one of their most famous iconic songs, Saint Stephen, and that's a bass riff that you're listening to. Like, I mean, like that, he drove so much melodic content for that band rather than just syncing up with the kick drum and being a 4 on the floor guy. Like he's really, really great. Super fun.
Man. All right. Well, we could talk about that all day. I wanted to ask you, so with the YouTube stuff, like, did that organically happen, like I was saying for you, like it did for me, where it's like gigs shut down, therefore you have to turn to some creative outlet, or how did that happen for you?
No, it didn't. I started, we back up a little bit before COVID. My wife got pregnant and I was on the road, and I went, you know what? Can't do this anymore. Like I want to be there for my kid growing up, and to support my family and, stuff like that. So it was like, I got to look for a real job. And a friend of mine had just started a distribution firm called, it was at that point in time, it was called Motherload Audio Supply, which became Mass Distro. And so I started doing that. I started working, and it was just the two of us for a really long time. And we were kind of looking at, stuff we could offer our clients. And one of those was gear demos. And he's a great musician, so we just kind of drew straws, and I drew that straw. And the story behind Demos in the Dark is actually that I didn't even have a camera, so he loaned me a camera, and the ISO was set really low on the camera, and I didn't know anything about it, and I didn't want to go in there and like mess with settings because I thought I could break it. So I just started filming as best as I could with that the way it was, and it was terribly dark. And I decided to just kind of call it out so that nobody else could say it.
Right.
Um, but at the same time, like I still to this day, I mean, it's like weekly I get somebody who's like, turn up the lights. Um,
Don't do that.
but still, you know, it just kind of grew from there and grew from there. And so, so at the beginning, I was just doing our stuff and kind of cutting my teeth on our stuff. And then I ultimately decided that I wanted more practice doing it. So I kind of opened it up to other brands for free. Like, I'll just do this for you. And
Mhm.
boy, when you do that, like the floodgates just open.
Mhm.
And so I was really busy for a long time doing it. And Mass Distro grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And they are now, this international distribution firm with, offices on multiple continents. And I found myself in a position where, I was spending my days talking about international tax laws and, different stuff like that. And honestly, it was so over my head.
Mm.
Um, and the only way that I was in that position was just because I had been there for so long. When it was just the two of us kind of smoking pot and selling some pedals, like that was, that was a different thing. It outgrew me. And I really I really didn't see a position for myself there anymore. So at that point in time, that's when I decided to make this kind of the thing that I do.
Mhm.
Um, and So yeah, it was a very intentional start, but it wasn't intended to be what it became. If that's if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
for sure. Well, that I mean, I feel like for lack of a better way of saying, like, things happen for a reason, that's, like, kind of a nice pathway to kind of figure out and find yourself in that moment too, you know?
yeah, and I mean, I always say that if I were to go back to my 20-year-old self and tell him that this is what I was doing, this is what I'm doing for a living, I would punch myself in the mouth, but
Sell out.
yeah, but one of the things that happened during the pandemic was that I was still playing locally with some groups and some groups that would do some light touring and stuff like that. And when the pandemic hit, I remember talking to friends who were like, "Man, I cannot wait to get back. Not wait to get back on that stage. I can't." And I was like, "I can."
Right?
I'm like, "I'm loving every second of this."
Mhm.
And so when the restrictions got lifted, I basically quit every band that I was playing in except for one. We play quarterly, and he's got some clout, so it's always, there are always people there, and it's, pays
Right.
well. And we don't, we've been doing it for so long, we don't rehearse, and it's fun for me, which is
Yeah.
really the most important part of it. And yeah, I mean, I for me, it was like the live music aspect was like that was part of the process, and that was like you had to fulfill that if you wanted to have a career in music. And I feel like COVID called bullshit on a lot of stuff. It called bullshit on NAM. And it called bullshit on that too, because that's kind of where all these like really great bedroom producers. I hate when people say bedroom producers like in a negative way, because there have been so many incredible composers and artists and producers that came out of that period, just sitting in front of and it's I it was a great thing, I think, for music to just take a step back, take a break from
Yeah.
doing live music, um and start to appreciate the studio stuff again. And that was actually when if you would have asked me before the pandemic, if you would have been like, you more of a studio guy or a live guy? I would have been like live guy all the way. So I didn't know until that was the only thing I could do.
Yeah. Well, dude, you do such a great job too of like all like the fidelity audio wise and like how you do things. Like I find that there's a few people that are doing like what our contemporaries, what we do with YouTube gear demos and everything. They're just at the next level, and you're there with how you shoot stuff and how you approach telling a story with your videos, even though
I
you're
appreciate that.
yeah, like even though you're like demonstrating what something can do, like a product, what it can do and what you like about it. You do such a beautiful job of making it interesting.
Oh, thank
And,
you.
I could take notes from you all day and like Edge of Breakup does a great job. Like there's a few people that are just an RJ, like just being very cinematic with things. Even if it's dark,
Mhm.
you still are telling a great story and making it your fingerprint is on it. And that's something that I think is hard to find. And like your audience obviously is finding you, still finding you, and has found you and continues to build. But it's fun to watch from the outside too, because I don't have any of that background. So everybody that is around me that's doing it, I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm not gonna do that because they're already doing that. But what can I do that's like in the spirit of that? You know what I mean?
What once I mean, so for a while, like I thought the niche, which is a gimmick, was the dark thing. Like I'm doing the same thing that everybody else is doing. I'm just doing the dark. Um, but then like it takes me a lot longer to do a gear demo than it takes um some other people who I know.
Right.
And part of that is really just kind of taking that studio experience, um and um and then also the songwriting. Like I went to school for composition, and so I have never like viewed myself as a ripping guitar player. And um I have always kind of considered myself more of a composer, and so that's where the careful consideration gets taken in. Like I'm not gonna go buy some backing tracks and then noodle over them. Like we're gonna build this thing from the ground up. And actually, I'm super excited because um I'm gonna start doing that. I put out a video today with some Asheville Music Tools stuff. And instead of like doing the track part, which is the polished part, and then we come in with some chords and we turn some knobs and we make some sounds. Now I'm starting to take each individual piece of that track and then not only showing you um how I played it, but also the gear that I used to make the sound of that. So we can go through each individual part together, um, and 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 really learn, kind of like get inside my head and learn how I'm doing that, because I've learned that a lot of my questions that I get are not about like my guitar playing, because again I think I'm a fairly mediocre guitar player. It's always been about studio production, and it's about composition, like. And so, I think I do at some point, if I get some free time, I have wanted to do not necessarily lesson based stuff, but just kind of like, people are like, where do you get these chords from? It's like, I followed it till there, and then there was something else, and then it went, and all of a sudden we had three different keys, and now we're back. And for me, it's a very natural thing, but I think it would be fun to kind of teach that, teach about borrowed chords, and teach about, how you don't have to stay in that same key. You can move around and come back, and how you do that with anchor notes and things like that. And that's kind of that's where I feel like my niche has become, not a ripping player. That's RJ,
Right.
and not the like very calm and oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Um Concise, Andy Martin.
Right.
Like he is you can't replicate that. I've tried that so many times. You cannot replicate what Andy Martin does. And it's just he's and I mean, Lord knows he's had enough time doing it, but like he has figured out the quickest and most concise way to give you all of the information about the piece of gear that he's doing, and
Mhm.
he never breaks a sweat. It's
Yeah.
like it's amazing.
It's
Um,
crazy, man. That's crazy.
yeah, and, it's like you said, I can't do the stuff that those guys are doing, but also when I decided to stop trying to do the things that those guys are doing and just do the thing that I'm doing, which is, recording songs, then it kind of started to click, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's super cool that it's kind of going in that direction for you because of your background and being able to talk about composition. That's gotta be fun to be like, oh, I can talk about this stuff and not to talk about like, oh, you got to use a 9-volt battery with this. Don't use power supply because it's you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that's cool.
I've been a little afraid to do it because I don't know if you've had conversations with like really super nerdy music theory types,
Mhm.
um, but it can get vile. Like there's no it's one of those things where like you're never gonna unlock it. Like you teach these master classes, unlock music theory. You're not there's nothing to unlock. It's a description.
Right.
It is a way to describe what happened in that part of the song. And there are multiple ways to look at it, even within music theory. And so, like I don't want to end up in, like shit posting battles with people in the comments section about, like how my theoretical explanation of what I did is different than theirs.
Right. That's not a
Like
subdominant. What are you talking
right,
about? Yeah,
right,
yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. No, it's that can get a little bit, much with some people. But I mean, I think regardless, I think it's fun that you get to even lean into that direction because
Yeah.
man, I woke up today and as I do to wake my brain up, I'd look at my phone and see what's going on. And I clicked on like YouTube and I had a comment. Somebody it's rare that I get like people going, "Blah, blah, 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 blah." But I
Yeah.
had some guy bitching about something that I did in a video, and I was like, he's not wrong. I mean, I'm not, I am playing, bluesy dad licks here and there.
Yep.
But he's not wrong. But like, I'm sorry that you feel that way.
Yeah.
Like, but thanks for the comment and thanks for the view. But
Yeah.
it
I
gets
woke
old. That gets old. You know what I
I wo
mean?
I woke up to one as well, and I
Oh,
do
nice.
every day. Every day, I
Yeah,
wake up
yeah,
to a fun one, and I got it here. It just says, "What a waste of time. Sorry,
yeah.
move on."
Oh, no, right?
Um, and um, yeah, you got to learn to.
Thick skin it, man. It's just like, all right, whatever, dude. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, and people are always shocked when I tell them that I have to deal with that, and you know what? I am too.
Yeah.
Like this is not a topic of conversation that we should be getting super toxic about. And
Yeah.
like I again I'm really hard on these people, but I love them because I think what they're doing is necessary. But you spend 10 minutes on TGP, and it could get so vile, and they're talking about a fucking compressor,
Right.
and it's like I you know, I don't understand it. I don't understand how you can get so bent out of shape about this stuff, but people do.
Yeah.
Um,
It's interesting.
and you could say the same thing, like after a Wolves game, like I will be the guy who's complaining about the refs, and I'll be talking about how they got robbed on this and robbed on that, and and I'll get bent out of shape about it. And so maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's like like getting bent out of shape about something makes you feel like you're part of it, because that is ultimately, I don't know anybody from the Minnesota Timberwolves, but like, well, I'm not playing that game. Why am I getting so pissed off about this?
Right.
Um, and maybe it's because that's how I can feel like I'm a part of it, and
Mhm.
that might be being incredibly generous. I don't think the guy who was like, "What a waste of time," was trying to participate,
Right.
but that's how I take it.
Some people are just really salty, and I feel sorry for them sometimes. Just like, oh, I don't know what you're going through, but it's okay, man. Like,
Yeah.
but It's just part of the deal. And there's one thing. Do you have another couple minutes? I wanted
Yeah,
to ask you
sure.
really quick. Okay, before we do your lightning round get down, this is my last thing I wanted to talk to you about. In the vein of gear stuff, you know how sometimes you get comments like, "Oh, all you demo guys, you like everything," and I'm like, "Well, no. Like, what you don't see is the pedals that show up that we play that we're like, ugh, I can't do this. Like, my soul is like, I would be lying if I said I liked this." Like, so many things that have come to me that have been like, "I'm sorry," and I just send it back to the company. I'm just not connecting with it, is what I usually say. Is that kind of what you do too? Is you're just like, sorry, this isn't gonna be something that I would want to like play or
Yeah, I've sent a few things back. There have been there like I treat it as a challenge when I get something in that I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. It sounds like garbage to my ears. Which I think all kind of stems back to this. I had a professor who was really into pipe organ music.
mm,
And I remember listening to pipe organ music a lot because I was trying to figure out what it was that this guy was hearing. Because to me, like I'm listening to this Bach piece and it sounds nothing like the Bach piece. It sounds like the guy's got his feet on the thing. And, like I'm just like, I don't get it. But then I went to go see a live recital. And then you get the room and you get the feeling, and you all of a sudden all those notes have a whole different meaning. And it's just like, oh. And I think like sometimes when I get stuff in that I'm like, I don't know. Like I go back to that and I'm like, all right, what is the context? Let's find the context for this and let's find where it fits. And it doesn't always happen.
but that
But
probably informs your composition too. Like you write it
yeah,
around, yeah, that's really
yeah.
fun. Yeah. Mhm.
Um, I think what I do is I go, and a lot of people have figured this out, but like if I'm into something, you know it.
Yeah.
Like you'll hear it, and I'll editorialize it a lot more. If there's something that has come in that, I can make it work. It's not really my thing. But I can show you what I figured out. Then that becomes kind of the Andy Martin stone face. Here it is.
Right.
Here's exhibit A, you know? And so that's kind of how I've drawn that line. But there have been a few that I'm just like, like ring mods. Yeah, I don't want your ring mods. Never. I never want your ring mods. Like I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, I've had things come in where I'm like, I'm too old and dumb to figure out how to even make this thing work.
Yeah, there's some stuff that's option paralysis for sure, dude. That
Yeah.
I feel the same way. Sometimes I'm just like, I'm not even gonna like remotely like scratch the surface of what this thing can do,
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
thankfully, we have people out there who do that. I mean, like Mark Johnston is one who I'm a huge fan of. And, everybody gives him a hard time for doing like 30, 40-minute demos, but he goes through everything.
yeah,
He leaves no stone unturned. And that's necessary as well. Like it's necessary to have that. I always kind of look at gear demos as you find the stuff you find the demoer who is relatable to you.
mhm,
Um, I am not I'm not gonna learn much from somebody who's playing into an Ingle with a 7-string guitar and they're djenting and like there's nothing it's not bad, it's great because there are a ton of people who want to hear that because that's what they resonate with. Um and you just kind of find the players that I always joke, you find the demoer who probably has a similar record collection to you.
yeah,
And that's like there is no, I don't think there's anyone that's better than anybody else. And it's a bunch of different styles. And I think you just go with whatever resonates with you the most. And that's how you pick your king.
yeah. No, totally. I think staying in that lane, and there's so much room in the world for this stuff too. It's like there's some person that you're gonna, like you said, you're gonna resonate with, that you're gonna stay in that lane and find, a comfortable approach of, I would probably like that. If that person likes it, I bet you
Yeah.
I would like it,
Yeah.
that kind of
Well,
vibe.
and
So,
then there absolutely becomes kind of like a trust thing. Like
mhm,
you can kind of bank on that. Like you have like your favorite artist, right? If they put out a record, you're gonna like something on it.
mhm,
Like and so there is that trust built into it. And yeah, like I a lot of things you see a lot of complaints about like something like Walrus Audio, who has a huge budget, right? They have a massive budget and they can send out a pedal to 40 different people on nine different in 9 different countries and however many different time zones, and they all pop at the same time, and people are like, God damn it. And it's like, why? Did
right,
the what did the one that you like do it?
right,
Yes? Great. Then you got your information. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Like other people are getting it the same way you are. It doesn't concern you, like, and
mhm,
I mean, like, Walrus is fortunate that they have the budget to do something like that. Not everybody does. And,
yeah,
like, like you said, there's just so much room. And like, it drives me crazy when people are like, oh, it saturated the market. Yeah, no, he didn't.
right,
Like they covered their bases. That's what
right.
it's called.
Yeah, no, totally, dude. No, I'm way into it, man. I feel like it's fun, and I will tell you, man, I got the Overdrive Plus.
Yeah.
Dude, that might be one of the greatest overdrive pedals I have ever played.
Charles came over here before that was released, and we went down to Kansas City um to go eat barbecue with the guys from Sife Guitars. But it was easier for him to fly in to Minneapolis than we drove down together.
Nice.
Um, so I got to hang out with the prototype of it, and I didn't get it at first.
Really?
Yeah, took a little bit. And
Crazy.
I'm one of the few who have that experience. But it took some serious playtime before I was like, oh. And then once
Mhm.
I was like, oh, like then it was like everything else kind of fell into place. Um, yeah, it's a cool pedal, and it's very different. Everything Charles does is he does
Yeah.
whatever he feels like. It's
The
kind of
clarity in that pedal is
yeah,
just astounding to me. Like, it's just so clear, even with like this thick, kind of gnarly, chewy overdrive that it has going on. Like, every note is so clear. I played at the Maryland Music Awards this past weekend with my
I saw
band,
that. I saw that.
and dude, backline, like they
Sure.
had Fender deluxes, not deluxe reverbs. They had those Fender
Yeah.
deluxe.
Yeah.
Those things are the worst. The worst. And I was like, oh great. Cause if you put them on two, they're cranking. They're so loud.
Yeah.
So I just turned it on and attenuated it with the Overdrive Plus and just got my bass tone with that. And it sounded awesome.
Nice.
And I was like, man, like this thing just does something to an amp. And even like in this two rock, like I'm just like, dude, anytime I hear a pedal make that amp sound even better, I'm like, shit. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But like he's on to something. I haven't played any of his amps, and I haven't played his fuzz yet, but that pedal
Oh,
is just
the fuzz is on my board. I use it daily. And I use a silk tone amp pretty regularly. Um, really great stuff. And the funny thing about that Overdrive Plus is all those guys from After Dark and I are in a text group, and that text group has been going on for years, and it's daily, hourly. I mean, like we're pretty well
riffing.
connected, and Charles was like, I'm gonna do an overdrive pedal, and we were like, oh cool, what's it gonna be like? He's like, I don't know, I don't own any overdrive pedals. We're like, oh okay. And so like he made that pedal, and I believe to this day still doesn't own an overdrive pedal. And so like he wasn't thinking tube screamer, he wasn't thinking because He doesn't own any.
No wonder it's so awesome.
Yeah, so it was a truly unique feat. And with that, the parallel amp that he just put out, um, I believe it's come to my understanding that Two Rock did do a parallel Class A amplifier. Um, but I didn't know about it at a time. But just the attention to detail that was in that amplifier. The thing that blew me away was, the tubes never actually touched the chassis.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
Like who does that? Charles does that.
right. Yeah, I got to play through one of his amps one day because I mean, like Buddy Blues. I always talk to him about
Yeah,
it.
he actually bought he bought the. So when I finished up with the parallel, I sent it back to Charles, and Charles sent it over to Buddy, who bought it immediately. It was just like, I want this.
Yeah.
So be careful when you try one.
Dude, I'm all amped out right now. Although I saw PRS put out the 15-watt David Grissom amp today.
Okay.
Because he has they have like a 30-watt version, I think, but they put out like a 15-watt version, and I was like, whoa, that thing sounds amazing for the money. I think it's like $1,100. And it's got tremolo in it. It's a whole thing. Like it sounds pretty awesome. And I'm pretty sure because Paul Reed Smith's band played at the Maryland Music Awards. I hung out with him for a while talking, and he brought his own amp. He didn't have to use the backline garbage, but he had an amp up there that I did not recognize.
Yeah, you think it was that?
It might have been, but it sounds gorgeous. It just,
Cool.
I mean, that dude just, he's so, talk about attention to detail. Like Paul Reed Smith is so, and I love his whole vibe and what he does. I've owned several of his guitars and I've never connected with him for some reason. I've sold them all. But their amps, I'd love to try because I played through their that Hendrix amp, the HDRX or something, 20-watt amp, and man, that thing is gold. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I've never played through one.
Yeah, they're pretty damn good. So
yeah, no, he's a hero. One of my favorite things that he said was that it will stick with me forever. Was on the topic of guitar pickups and kind of how much weight we put on guitar pickups. He said something like, the idea that the guitar pickup is the thing that makes the sound either better or worse is the equivalent of hearing someone play a Stradivarius violin and talking about the microphone. And it was like, you're right.
Yeah,
there's so much more than just those coils.
Yeah. He makes a good guitar, man. He does. He makes a good instrument. So
yeah, I'm with you though. I'm a Fender guy, and
right.
Dude.
Yeah, I know. I bought this when I turned 40. I think it was like my midlife crisis. I always wanted a custom shop like Strat.
Oh, yeah.
And I got it from Wildwood, from their like Wildwood 10 thing, and one of the best Strats I think I've ever touched in my life. And
if you put me on a desert island, it's like, give me a Strat.
Yeah,
that's it. That's all I
need. Do you love Tellys too, though? Are you like
I do. I have a number of them, and I enjoy them. But my first big boy guitar was a Strat, and that was what I did most of my learning on, and it is the most comfortable instrument to me, and I can make it sound pretty much however I want it to make it sound, and I don't know. And that that's it's interesting being a pedal demoer. If you were to look at my board, it hasn't changed in forever. Nice. I use, for overdrive, I use a Tim. Yeah. And because like however many years ago when they put out that first Timmy, I was like, I saved up some cash and bought it. And that was what I learned. Like, I learned how to get everything out of it that I possibly could get out of it. And the mic that I use on a lot of stuff is a C414 XLS. And that was another thing where it was like, I was young. I scraped together like the $1,500 or whatever it was to get one. And that was all, that was all I could afford. And
Yeah.
so I learned how to mic everything with that mic. And I think, one of the things that we, we live in this world now where like there's just so much out there, and if you don't like what you have, you can trade it. If something doesn't spark your interest right away, you can trade it and get another thing, and and you're just kind of chasing this dragon all the time, which is fine. Like that's part of the fun. I think we get down on people who flip gear regularly. They're having fun. Leave them alone.
Totally.
Like that's part of the process for them. But for those who don't, it's like if you take one piece of gear and you just sit on it and use it to death, like that's it's gonna be a great experience for you. And so that, kind of going back to the Strat, where it's just like that was all I had for the first 12 years of me playing guitar, and that's where I'm most comfortable going back to. So
that's awesome, dude. Yeah, I agree. It's a great instrument.
Yep,
he got it right the first time.
He did.
It's crazy. All right, Ryan, let's do the lightning round get down, buddy. I'm going to keep you all night here. I'm having fun talking to you, though, so thank you again for doing this. All right, so I got 10 questions for you. We're going to cruise in an altitude of 112 BPM for a little suspense here in the background. And then I got 10 questions for you. You can explain your answers if you want. You don't have to. You can burn right through it if you want, but I'm always open to stories. So first one's always the same. Lennon or McCartney?
McCartney. Yeah, I mean, you can't deny how much influence that man had on that band. He played half the great guitar parts in that band. He played half the great piano parts. He played half
some of the drums.
Yeah.
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 It's crazy. I'm in agreement on that one. All right. Mega Man or Mario Brothers?
Mario Brothers. Mega Man, I could never get it. I couldn't get it right. It was just too hard.
Okay. Live in the mountains or live by the beach?
Ooh. So I live. Ooh. I would go with the mountains. I love the beach, but I would go with mountains.
All right. I'm gonna know the answer to this now since we just talked about this. But Super Strat or Les Paul?
I'd go with the Super Strat.
There we go. Dark Side or the Wall?
Dark Side, 100%. I mean, the wall had some junk on it, and Dark Side is brilliant from the first second to the last.
Fair enough. Pizza, cheese or pepperoni?
Got a story. Pepperoni, but my son is 7 years old, and he only eats cheese pizza, and he loves it. And what we do when we order pizza is my wife gets to have the pizza with the toppings on it, and Harrison and I split the cheese pizza. So it's commonly referred to as Dad's pizza now. And so if all of this doesn't work for me, the stuff I'm doing now, I'm going to open a shop. It's going to be called Dad's Pizza. It's going to be cheese only, and my clientele is going to be all parents of 7-year-old kids.
Amen. Nice. Zappa or Anastasia?
I was a big Zappa fan, so that's where I'm gonna go.
All right, cool. Amplifiers, you want low wattage or high headroom, high watt amps?
Low wattage, always. Okay. For me, it's when I look at pedals, I look at it less of how does this pedal make a sound, and more of how does this pedal work with my amplifier, because I think that's a really important relationship. So I'm big into that. I know people who are the opposite. Obviously they sell lots and lots of Sun amplifiers and stuff like that. They're just headroom for days.
Right. What's the lowest wattage you like to work with? Are we talking like 15 watts? Or are we talking like you like to go down to like 2 watts if you can?
No. I think once you get below 10, I think at that point you're getting kind of gimmicky.
Mm-hmm.
And so like a good, like a Princeton, like a 12 to 15, area is really where I like to sit.
Nice. All right. Tremolo, bias or harmonic tremolo?
I love harmonic tremolo. Can't go wrong.
Yeah, me
Can't
too.
go wrong.
Me too. All right, here's the last one, Ryan. If you could take one album and erase it from your memory, just so you can go back and experience it for the first time again, what album would you pick?
That's crazy. That's a crazy question, Mark.
Yeah.
I kind of did that to a degree. When I was a teenager, I was really into like Led Zeppelin and Hendrix and Pink Floyd. And I made a conscious choice to, back when you could do this, to where I put my CDs away and learn about other types of music. And it stayed there until after college. And then when Spotify became a thing and all of a sudden we have access to music, like all of it, I went back and I listened to those 3 bands again. And Hendrix, I was like, yeah, this is just as good as I remember it. Zeppelin, I was kind of like, not really. Like, this is a really great rhythm section, but like Robert Plant lost his voice after the second record, and but then Pink Floyd, my God. I remember my roommate. I'd yell down the hall to my roommate. I'd be like, "You gotta hear this," and he'd be like, "I never stopped listening to it." And I got to have that experience listening to the entire Pink Floyd catalog over again, and just kind of being like, it was almost like it was the first time, and it was wild. But in answer to your question, I think fulfilling this first finale by Stevie Wonder would be one that, because just the goosebump factor to this day is still pretty high after having heard it a billion times. I can't imagine what it was like the first time I heard it.
Okay. All right. Well, you made it to the other side. Well done. Yeah, man. It's interesting. Like, I've asked that question, I don't even know now. I mean, definitely 100 and some odd times that I've asked that question. And it's very interesting because it stays in the realm of that, of like Stevie, Pink Floyd, the Beatles, obviously, just like in that realm. Like, I haven't heard too many left field things, except for some people that like drop like a random like sludgy record that I've never heard in my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because it's like the classics are classics for a reason.
Well, I've always said that if I could go back in time and experience anything, and this would be like, you're going back in time, but you don't have the knowledge of the future. Like, if I would just plant myself into a time period and I don't have any knowledge of anything that happened before or after, what I want to know, because when I listen to all of my favorite artists, they talk about how like important Elvis Presley was to what they played. The Beatles were all about Elvis, all Kinks, everybody, they were all about it. And I listened to Elvis Presley and I'm like, this is dumb. This is dumb. All of this is just dumb. And so I would want to go back and have that, because it was obviously a big deal, because it changed the world of music forever. And I would love to go back and have the experience of hearing Elvis Presley for the first time after, having never heard it before.
Right.
I think that would be, I think that would be wild, because I'm too far removed from it now. And it sounds hokey and stupid, and I don't like it.
Right. Yeah. No, dude, my dad was a huge Elvis fan, and that and the Eagles, 2 bands that I don't identify with, like 2 artists that I don't identify with. And I think about, he passed back in September, and sometimes when it, like, that stuff comes on, I try to like give it a second to be like, all right, Dad, I'm gonna sit with it, and then I'm like, nope.
Yeah,
I still don't like it.
The Eagles were a tough one, because I went through that. Everybody goes through their 20s, right, where it's like, Sonic Youth is the greatest thing I've ever heard, and all this other stuff, and the Eagles suck. Like I saw The Big Lebowski in the theaters. I know where that came from. So I had all those years where I just intentionally didn't listen to the Eagles, and anytime they brought them up, I was like, the Eagles suck. And And it wasn't until it wasn't until I hit like 40 that I was
Mm,
like, I put on Hotel California and I was like, why? This is brilliant.
it's a
Like
good record.
this whole record is brilliant.
I know it's and I respect the hell out of that band and the musicianship and everything. I think I never was able to embrace it the way that I think my dad wanted me to embrace it
Sure.
because I mean I was listening to Soundgarden and Nirvana
Yep.
and Pearl Jam in my room and he's like, what the hell?
Nope.
He was probably so worried about me.
Yeah, there's no country in that stuff.
No, but I don't know, man. Well, Brian, dude, I gotta shut this down because I'm taking up too much of your
Yeah.
time. I really appreciate you. Let me pop up some of these links so everybody knows. If you don't know about Demos in the Dark, you might be living under a rock if you're a guitar player and you don't know about Ryan and what he's doing. But it's really fantastic stuff. Like I love watching what he does on Instagram as well. Make sure you go over there and say hello, and then YouTube too. So anything else like did you want to say, like promote or anything that's going on? And also the After Dark podcast. Well, are you calling it a podcast? Like, are
I
you?
don't know.
Yeah.
We're kind of ambiguous about it, but we should have you on. I think that would be a great time. It's like this,
Love to hang
except
out.
there are 8 like stone people.
Let's do it. I'm in.
We should. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I think it would be a blast.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, we do that every Wednesday, but not this Wednesday because my Wolves are going to be playing on Wednesday and I cannot miss that one.
I didn't know you were such a big basketball fan. That's fun.
I do that and football. I'm a big NFL guy.
Okay.
Yeah, you gotta have those things. When your hobby becomes your job,
Yeah,
you got to find other hobbies.
I know. I'm a big baseball. The Orioles are kind of back alive now, so it's
They
like
are.
it's fun in Baltimore right now. Man,
Yeah.
I was so bummed out last season when they got to the playoffs. And my buddy who was my drummer at Berkeley lives in Texas and he's a huge Rangers fan. So I was like, you better not say shit. But man, it's fun now to be a Baltimore baseball fan. I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, and I have nothing but I love Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
I was really bummed to see what happened to the Ravens last season.
Me too.
And I'm looking forward to seeing what they're gonna do this year.
Yeah.
So
hell yeah. Well, Ryan, thank you so much again, buddy.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Hold on one second. Everybody else, take care of yourself. Take care of each other. We'll see you next time.